G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute. This week I'm joined by Astropub. How you doing, buddy?
They're good. I'm very cold here in Austin, Texas. It's -4 degrees Celsius, so
I will happily
but
take
we're
that
okay.
cold for you because I'm sweating my balls off. It is terrible. But yeah, those are the ropes, the different side of the world. So yeah, and you guys a lot of you guys are snowed in. I talked to DG360 this morning, and he's stuck in with nothing to do. But yeah, so it's an interesting turn of events that you guys are having over there. But that's not the important news that we had this week. So I'll let you set the stage, if it were. So go for it, Paul.
All right, so I'm going to get started by saying that we had a roadmap update that was delayed because there was going to be a significant change to how the roadmap functioned, and they wanted to make sure that they had the right sort of tone and everything. And it was released on Wednesday, February 2nd.
It says right there in the image.
And
that's how I knew.
Yeah. February 2nd. And the basic gist of what was actually said is that because Squadron 42 is becoming the focus of the development, they are going to do everything for Squadron first and then import it into Star Citizen. So pretty much everything that we see in the roadmap right now has to be implemented into Squadron before it goes into Star Citizen, including things like not server meshing, but things like salvage and all sorts of basically everything that would be in Squadron goes into Squadron first, especially gameplay stuff. And so that was part of what they mentioned, and the other part was that because of the community's own reactions to the release view being seen as promises, they decided that they're going to tier back on the release view and make it so that it's only the most recent patch, not like the future patches, because it was difficult for them to explain that like anything that's beyond the current patch is more just like evaluations, is just guesses on their part, because of the nature of how development works for them.
Yep.
And the community did not take it well. We'll talk about that in a moment because of the wording that was mentioned in the roadmap in terms of who was to blame for the actual delays and such.
So let's talk about this the roadmap then, as in not getting a couple of up to a year in advance. How do you feel about that personally? Do you I don't think it's that bad. Actually, as a content creator, it's a bloody brilliant thing actually when you really think about it, because it allows us to go in and find the secret source and all the little bits in that, because people don't you've said this several times, people don't like to read, so it allows us to go in and pull out the good stuff.
They rely on people like us to kind of analyze for them. Not everyone does that. Obviously, lots of people read, but I honestly don't think it's a bad thing, because the reality of I always get this wrong. I think it's agile is the name of the development style they use.
Yep.
The reality of agile is that you rarely know exactly what you're doing beyond your current sprint, because anything that can happen during a sprint, something that seems simple could end up running directly into spaghetti code, and you're just like, okay.
It's a little bit like R&D. That's the way I'd look at it. So if something doesn't work out, they've got to kind of like think on their feet, be agile, and move. That's kind of where that comes from.
Yeah,
and think with your feet.
And the fact that they're tackling one thing at a time means that they could reach something that they think is a small problem and turns out to be a big problem. So if you're planning on something well beyond that, you have to, those are mostly guesses, because if everything works out perfectly, then you have everything ready to go for the next section. But the community didn't really understand that, which I get. And the reality is it probably doesn't hurt anybody. I think it's actually a good thing, and it'll actually, for once, set expectations.
Yep.
So it'll help set expectations for what's actually going to be coming in the current patch, and relying on more people to look at the progress tracker and the monthly reports to see what's actually being worked on.
Yeah. And a lot of people did see them as promises. They weren't
Yes.
promises. They were their intention or their planning to do so. And as you've just explained, plans change. Just the nature of how it is, especially when you're doing that kind of R&D style of development or agile development. You have to bend and flex to fit the nature of what you're trying to do. And some best laid plans, all that type of stuff. So yeah,
nothing survives first contact with anything. It's everything. Plans never survive first contact with anything. The enemy, the public, whatever. Things just change.
Yeah.
Now we can move on to the next part, because that's the basic gists.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of stuff that got removed from the roadmap that is not really removed in the traditional sense. What they said was it's in Squadron now. They don't know when it's going to come into Star Citizen, the PU. So they wanted to remove it from 317 until they had a better idea of where that was land. It could be 318, could be 319, it could be 347. We don't know. And they don't know either, but that's why they're kind of judging it. But usually when that kind of thing happens, it just means that it's probably going to shift to 318 or, may shift to 319. But we won't know until probably a couple months away when we get closer to 317 itself. And that's to keep that into perspective. It's not like in the past where we've seen things get cut and it just disappears into the ether. It's more like these are done in Squadron. We just need to know where they go to Star Citizen, when they go into Star Citizen, when we have the time to do that. So, going to the next part though, why people were really angry.
Yeah, so
where CIG screwed up.
Yeah, so for me, I think it really comes down to that one comment that was made that this is kind of your fault, and they were just a little bit poorly worded, and really at the end of the day, what they were saying was because people kept thinking they were promises, that's why it was our fault. But people have looked further into this, and that's where I think the issues come from, because again, it's been poorly worded. And the funny, ironic thing is, it is our fault because we don't understand that the way that they're trying to plan out, and they've said so many times that is their best laid plans, and it just falls on deaf ears. Like the one that I kept on hearing. And I went back and read a lot of the comments in Spectrum, and I don't go to Spectrum very often, so that shows you how much of a big deal that was this week. Was things like, salvage has been removed off the roadmap 7 times, but they never stopped to think why it's been removed off the roadmap, because they were trying to get salvage done, but there were other things that came in that pushed it back or made it less of a priority. And again, agile development, you've got to move and think on your feet, and because they need other things before that gameplay can come in. That's why. And it's just a recurring thing where people they want to get this done, but you've also got to get other stuff done before it can work. They can't just go off and do salvage and leave all this other stuff, because it just won't work. You've got to have it's pieces of jigsaw puzzles that are all being interconnected, and they've all got to work seamlessly, or it just doesn't work.
A great example of this with a problem with community understanding is server meshing.
Yeah.
There are people who say that server meshing is going to solve all the problems, and the answer is it's not. Server meshing is actually an obstacle. It's a problem that they have to solve. And because everything is tied in with server meshing, when people say, "Oh, well, yeah, server meshing," some people will dismiss it and be like, "Oh, yeah, server meshing is going to save everything, right?" And the answer is no, it's not, obviously, but it's also not going to be like this impossible thing to do. But everything that's been done to the core tech has been done in the service of server meshing, because it is such a big part of the game. And because people don't fundamentally understand that, despite CIG having dedicated panels and Q&As, so on and so forth, because people just come up with their own interpretations because they don't want to read. They'd rather listen to me or you or Board Gamer or DG360 or whoever and let us interpret it for them, which is dangerous. That's the case. And
they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
All these parts are interconnected. No one works without the other.
And I've also heard a lot of people saying, like, "Oh, this is so that we can't hold them accountable." But the reality is let's be honest. Salvage has been kicked down the road like 7 times. they made more money than they've ever made before in the last 2 years.
Yep.
You're not holding them accountable. This isn't you holding CIG accountable for, or them trying to prevent you from holding accountable. They just don't want to hear you scream about it anymore when you don't understand how it works. That being said, it's not all our fault.
No.
It's not. And CIG refused to take admission for its own faults. And I think that's the real kicker. I think that's where CIG really screwed up.
You have to. We were saying before the show, we're talking about them pointing the finger, and I don't think any company, human, person can ever point the finger at someone else when they're never able to point it themselves, and they never ever will admit when they've done wrong. They'll just go dead silent, right? And we know they've stuffed up. They know they've stuffed up, but they'll never admit it. And I don't understand quite why. I think it's the people at the top. They just don't ever want to admit they've done something wrong. But if they were, put it this way, it's far less transparent if you will never admit you're wrong. If you're wrong, you are literally transparent. I'll leave it at that.
It's much more. People will trust you a lot more if you say, we screwed up here. This is how we're going to fix it. Because by them saying this whole thing is in itself kind of an admission of fault, but without them actually saying, hey, we screwed up. And let me give you an example. CIG does not set expectations properly. They do their best to try to tell people that these are temporary, but then they leave something on the roadmap until a month before it releases when they know it was never going to be there, when the community said this is going to get cut, and they still leave it on there. Like the 316, when 316 got completely gutted and everything was on there, salvage was still there in like November. It's like, you knew this wasn't going to be the case, CIG. You even talked to us as a community in September saying a lot of this stuff is going to go through Squadron first. You had 3 months and you didn't change it on the roadmap? That's not setting expectations. That's your fault why people got angry, why it got moved. That's not people getting up, like people have reasonable expectations, especially if something is on the roadmap a month before it releases. And that was the problem. It's like that's where I can see people getting angry, is like, not that, CIG has kicked the salvage down, 8 times, but that CIG consistently doesn't explain why it keeps moving.
Yeah.
And
I think that's
to remove it until the last possible moment.
That's a real key thing. Lack of communication. I think you and I will both agree in the last few years, the communication has definitely been wound back considerably. I also think that this is the type of thing that should have been given on ISC, like in a voice medium, rather than a text-based medium where it can be misinterpreted. I think that would have helped a fair bit as well. And maybe don't call it a roadmap anymore, or even before it shouldn't be called. It should begin projections or plans or something like that. Roadmap makes it sound like this is a in concrete plan, and or it's open to misinterpretation. So I don't know.
Like if for instance, and if CIG wants to know how to better talk with the community about what they're doing, text is the worst possible way of doing it. I mean, for me and like Space Tomato and other people who read the monthly reports, it's fantastic because we create content out of it. But I'd rather not have to create content if you just made it available through an audio format. With just Jared reading it off, in his soothed, dulcet tones. That would be fun.
And just have like the Lando music in the background. He should read it as Lando, the little part that he used to do. He could just have him doing that and talking. That would be hilarious, like Lando's notes or something like that. That would be perfect.
It would go a long way, because hearing it for people is a lot easier than reading it, and then also like more pretty pictures. The more pictures, like this last month report had a bunch of stuff dealing with like UI updates, and it's like, well, then why isn't there pictures of that UI update there? You updated the UI, let's see what it looks like, even the prototype phase, because people want to see that. They want to see it, they want to comment on it, they want to say if it's good or not. And it would probably also help the people who are making it if they take one look at the community and they're like, what is this golf swing BS? And they go, oh, probably shouldn't do that, because then it saves them time, on what they're working on.
Yeah. And as well as I do, it's not hard to install a copy of Audacity and just record a microphone. So I don't, it's literally as long as it takes to read would be how long it takes him to do that. So
Yeah.
I don't think that's too much of an ask.
It's not like not an insignificant amount of work, but compared to a full episode of ISC, it's probably 3 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours, and then running it by an audio person to manage to balance the levels,
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be a small thing, would go a long way to having people understand the community, the stuff a little bit better. But
so what did we do wrong as a community? I'll chuck that one in there too, because for me, I don't think a lot of people like it seems like there's been this huge reaction, and I think it's a couple of things. I think it's because we've just had that big break where nothing really happened for a couple of months, and we're now just getting back into the swing of it. So it was bad timing, and people feel like they were slapped in the face. I'm this backer, I deserve some kind of respect, type of thing. And the ironically funny thing is, the people that are talking like that are the people they're talking about in this post, which is the hilarity of it. Right?
The people who overreact every time something gets removed from the roadmap are the people who are overreacting right now.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy type thing. Like you're proving their point.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean,
and a lot of. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I don't think I think Spectrum's on fire, and Reddit is a mess. But the reality is, and this is gonna sound harsh, but gamer boycotts and gamer outrage is fleeting.
Yeah.
Like, it's already starting to tamp down because ISC came out, and ISC had refueling. And so a lot of people are like, I saw some legitimate comments on the YouTube video for ISC. It's like, oh, now you're just rushing this out here to deal with the damage. And it's like, you don't realize how long it takes for ISC to be created?
Yeah.
Like, that's not how any of this works. It's just, it's like those people who think that in gaming, it's not a Star Citizen problem, it's just gamers problem. It's like Sony buying Bungie was in response to Microsoft buying Activision and Blizzard.
Exactly.
It's like, no, they happened months before. Like the Sony deal ended, was an actual completion of the purchase, whereas the Microsoft for Activision was an announcement of they plan to do it, which was going to happen in a year. Those are two separate things entirely, but because of the timing, people assumed that, oh no, must be some sort of giant Ponzi game, giant chess game that these two are playing together. It's like,
I think it was 7 months that it took to get that organized from memory in an article that I read. So yeah, it was a fair slog of time. So yeah. But I think it's a perception thing again. Again, people see things that are just not quite there. And like you said, the distraction of IRC, and I'd also say Xenothreat. Most people are actually just playing the game, and they don't care. And I think that's another problem for another time. But like Reddit and Spectrum have become this place where people go to vent and let things off their chest, and it's not like it used to be. I'd much prefer proper discourse and actual exchanging of thoughts and ideas, just not okay, so CIG do something wrong, instead of just going, like this, F that, and insult. Where are the solutions?
CIG is trying to milk all the backers, and all the content creators are paid shills by CIG, and like all of those like these tired tropes that come out over and over again without any sort of evidence or backup, or they're just emotional outbursts.
Content creators,
everyone's tired of it.
Content creators just want the game to succeed, just like you do. We all started out as gamers too. That's why we got into this, because we just want to see it succeed. There's no, CIG don't pay me diddly shit. I know they give Paul some free ships once in a while, and Space and a few of the other guys here, but I don't get anything. I don't think Agrid gets it. They wouldn't give Agrid anything. He pays too much money. But you get my point. We just all want the game to succeed, and I think most people at CIG want the game to succeed too. If I was to put blame on anyone at CIG, I would say it's more likely some higher ups that just don't understand why certain people get annoyed, and not admitting fault. it's a human thing. You stuff up, you admit it, you move on. And I think a lot of the situations we've had in the past where they've gone dead silent and just kind of, does eventually blow over. I will totally agree with that. So that's why they keep doing it. But it would blow off a hell of a lot quicker if they just said, sorry, we stuffed up and moved on, because it makes them human. And anyone that's vulnerable like that, you go, cool, he learned from their mistakes, or he or she learned from their mistakes, and you move on. But they don't do that, and that, I think, is why so many people get pissed off. It's because they just don't ever seem to empathize with the community, and that's what makes the community so angry. So if that was the message I would be sending to CIG, it would be, you need to start empathizing with us and seeing why we're generally pissed off. And I don't think that post did anything particularly wrong when you think it through, but it was very poorly worded.
Yeah, there was it was the lack of empathy. It was the lack of empathy, and because it was a wall of text, it was easy for people just to say a meme like CIG blamed backers for delaying the game when they didn't say that. But it's easy to meme that because no one's going to read that wall of text because they don't like reading, because gamers, don't like read or have poor reading comprehension. It's just the reality. And I just said it. I just said a very incendiary thing right there. So boycott Paul Shelley. Like,
I'll put it in another way, Paul. Like when we run a Discord, right? And I reckon if I went around and asked yourself and a few of the other Inforunners, and I reckon I could almost ask any content creator, most of the problems that we have when we have to moderate something that's gone wrong, it's text based. Almost every single time, because it's such a cold medium. And that's why I kind of said earlier, it would have been much better if it was done in video or even audio. And guess what? I think, again, if this had been recorded in audio and it was alongside the comment, I think people would have actually gone and listened to the audio just to double down and make sure. And I think that would have also alleviated it. But, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Well, to say this as well is like anything this massive in terms of changes needs to be a video, a video or an ISC or SCL. That would be another thing, just because people would be a little bit less vitriolic if it was someone explaining it. If Jake was sitting there on video saying, "This is what we did. This is what we want to do in the future. We noticed that some backers thought that this was promises. We didn't want them to say that, but we want to manage expectations properly, so we are doing this." If that was a video, you'd still get people angry, because there's some people who are just going to always be angry. The people who are angry that things get moved off the roadmap, those are the same people. And I'll say, I've done it before. We've all done it before. We see something on the roadmap slip that we really wanted to, we can get pissed off. But at the same time, it's like, there comes a point where, but at the same, people are just always gonna get mad.
Well,
there's some people you can't deal with it. This would mitigate that problem,
There's all these boycott stuff about, they're doing the Chinese New Year's sale, and they're doing, we've got Valentine's Day coming up in about 10 days time as well, about boycotting them. That's all well and fine, but it's like you said, like every other boycott I've ever seen, and I remember you brought one up in your stream about Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I was actually one of the people that were really annoyed by that back when that happened. But guess what? I still brought the game. It wasn't as enjoyable because they didn't have dedicated servers, but I still brought it. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of other people brought it, and we're all still going to play this game. We're just annoyed about how they're doing it, and at the end of the day, they'll just keep moving on doing what they're doing because it's working. The only way, unless you can get some kind of massive amounts of people demanded refunds, and half all their money pool went to zero. That's the only way you're going to get the reaction that people are looking for, and it's just not going to happen, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you are a person who's like, this is my last straw, I'm done, I don't want to trust CIG anymore, like, that's fine, you do you.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, anything we say is not going to change your mind anyways.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is that, collective action is difficult in video games because people tend to not follow through. And I can almost guarantee you that come Invictus, they will still make buku bucks, and people will forget about this in a month. When 3.17 comes out and it has some new features or the whole selling thing, people will make coffee memes, and then like the whole end of this whole thing will just be a distant memory that some people who are holding on to will hold on to, but most people will have moved on. You know.
I can't agree more. And it's
So,
like you said, people have already started to do so because of a few
yeah.
reasons. I do hope CIG. My takeaway from this, from a CIG perspective, is I would like a little bit more transparency. I think they have closed off a lot more over recent years, and if they're asking for huge sums of money, I think we probably should get a bit more information. You know, things like I'll give another example: the Odyssey. You know, like that was a real lack of information, and should have had a bit more transparency to it. And they said nothing again. And I think at some point, especially when things are taking so long, there is I don't want to call it a breaking point, but like a steerage or a traction, and I've brought this up several times before. A lot of the older backers don't spend money anymore, or not as much money as they used to, and I think that repetitive events like this. So if you look over, you know, COVID's obviously driven everyone a little bit crazy, right? But that cooking pot analogy and the way things are going on, I think they're going to get more people spending less with the way with their attitude. Where if they're more open, people are more going to be more open with their wallets. It's a really simple ideology in my book. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they'll necessarily get less money, but I think they would be getting more money if they were being more open about these things.
That's probably the better way to explain it. Yes, agreed.
Yeah, like I don't think it's like they're gonna suddenly run out of money. They'll break records again this year. It's just the reality, especially if they get half the things they want to get in.
Yeah.
But if they did things like did a Q&A about the Odyssey before they started selling it, and you know, these, especially those big ships, people would have been less, it would have caused less fires. You know, having you know,
where's the legal ground, Paul, with that? Because they bring out the Odyssey, and then the Q&A came out, I believe it was 10 days after, and you've only, how many, is it a 14-day return policy, or is it a 30-day?
14-day it's 14-day return policy.
You see what I mean? Like that's a little dodgy. You see what I mean? So I agree with you on that. Like it should be, you have the information. Like everyone wants the information to purchase. Like they're literally asking people to buy it on blind faith. That's I'm sorry, but like if you're not going to be transparent, you ain't getting blind faith. Like it's just not going to happen that way.
And things change. You know, everyone knows that like things change. Like I think personally think things like the Ion controversy was stupid. And
me too.
People got upset.
It was a given.
Things change. That's just how it happens.
It'll change again too. As we get closer to Reese, we keep talking about this, and I don't know what it is, but see, I don't know if it's just other content creators or streamers, but I feel a lot of streamers live so much in the now, they don't look so much into the future. Like a lot of other fellow content creators I listen to, I was just like, whoa, like you're taking this way too far. Like just, it's going to change back. Like you don't, like I'm disappointed with what happened to the Redeemer, but I have full faith the Redeemer is going to have it come back at another point, like because that's just what will happen, you know. So and it'll be the same.
When they get a chance to balance it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But that's an example of like where you could CIG could do better is like let us know about these, especially these huge ships before they go on sale. We need to know what these are. And, you know, give us the concept ideas, give us a question and answer so we can answer it, and then put it on sale after that Q&A gets released. Or things like better rundowns, or like talk to us before you start doing things. Yeah. So that, you know, not while you're doing things, because it sounds like CIG is trying to ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
That's it.
And but there are some things like you got to change stuff in the game so it works, and people are going to get angry. Like you're not going to change that fact. Yeah. But just those little things beforehand would help the overall mood of many people to feel like they're actually part of the system, because backers are part of the development. CIG wants to say that, they like to talk about that, but then make backers feel like they're part of the development rather than being someone you're milking cash from.
It's really important, because I think I can't speak for everyone, but I definitely feel as someone that's been here over that time period, it seems less and less like I'm a part of development and I'm just a
Yeah.
wallet that they want to take money from. And I feel like it's gone from passion to profit. I use that term a lot. I don't know if I use it on shows, but I definitely use it a lot with you guys. So yeah. Lastly, I actually want to talk about what I think kind of the final takeaway should be besides what we've just talked about. And I actually think it's good news that there are more development going to Squadron 42 because we're probably going to get it sooner. So that kind of means, because that came up a lot, like, why are you even working on, like, people got so pissed. They were like, why are you even working on Squadron 42 when it's clear most people want Star Citizen? You got to look at it from a financial background. It's financially way more secure to get the single player game out the door, get all those sales behind the belt, and have all that money or a nest egg of money that they can use to get more people.
And then they use Star Citizen to help develop the technologies that they can just insert into the sequel. And then because
Exactly.
they already have the engine and
Yep.
all of the assets that they can do it, they can pump out the sequel in much less time than they did the first one, and
Yep.
they can do the same thing over and over. They can start doing spin-off single player.
Yep.
And at one point they said that they thought they could do a single player every 2 years. I don't think that's
Yep.
possible. Maybe every 3 to 4 years, but if you had a
Mm.
single player game of Star Citizen every 3 to 4 years over the next 20 years, each of them making minimum uh, 80 to 100,000 or $100 million, $80 to $100 million,
That's
Star Citizen
crazy.
would be absolutely
Yeah.
fine. I mean, that's low end like kind
Mm.
of concepts, because looking at similar games like Quantic Dreams games
Yep.
and stuff like that, which you know, um,
Let's not
and
even
that's
get
not even counting
into
things.
other
Yeah,
games
like
that could be on the engine, like Star Wars and Star Trek. I bring that up all the time. You,
or
yeah.
selling it on consoles, or putting it on Steam, or putting it
Yep.
on any of those things. So and I think that's put into perspective as well, is that anything that's being done for Squadron is also being done for Star Citizen. But the
Yep.
fact that they're focusing on it tells people like me that
Mm.
they're focusing on the gameplay of Squadron, not does it run. Now
It,
they're
it,
saying, is it fun? You
yeah.
know.
It's
So
financially stable to keep releasing those episodes too, because the sales of those episodes will definitely prop up this long-term development of the persistent universe. And we often hear them say like, "Oh, it's never going to be finished." It just basically means that they can just keep expanding the universe out, and they'll add expansion packs. Like, here's a Banu expansion pack, here's the Zion, and you can play as those races. That'll all be a part of it. And I think the real kickoff point from this game is going to be the release of Squadron 42. Once that comes out, I think everything will change. I think
yeah.
I don't think they're naturally going to become even more transparent, but I think it's going to just put so many people at ease. I think you'll see all the haters, like you can go on and see other content creators that talk about Star Citizen being a scam and all that. I think it'll just shut them up. Like they just
Yeah.
won't be able to talk shit about it, because I don't like the way Chris talked about CD Projekt Red at the end of not this year but last. He's not prepared to compromise on his vision, but I do think people like his brother and the board and stuff will make it so he doesn't polish it to 100%. He'll get it to 98 or something like that. But I think that product that we are going to get for Squadron 42 will be a lot more polished than, say, some really bad games that come out. I'm hearing about Dying Light 2 is buggy as hell that came out this week, but people still love it, and it's the same thing for Star Citizen. The PU is buggy as hell, but people still love it. But eventually it will get a lot more polished.
Yeah, I mean, that's the overall takeaway I have from this whole thing is CIG is doing the right things. They're saying the wrong things, but they're doing the right things.
Yep.
And that's important to take away, is that like I think overall the community is going to be healthier moving forward with a lot of these changes, and I think that their focus on Squadron is
Agreed.
a good thing. I think they could communicate a little bit better. Like there's a lot of
Agreed.
people who think that like nothing's coming out in Star Citizen. It's all coming out in Squadron and never coming out for Star
Yeah.
Citizen. That's like,
Yeah.
you don't read,
Mm.
but like, yeah, it's so there's some problems still, but
The
I
way
think
the way
overall it's better.
can I just say, like, from a development perspective, what that means is they don't, every time they make something and they have an alliteration, they don't have to also alliterate for the PU. So what that actually means is
Yeah.
they can just alliterate it locally in Squadron 42, polish and get it perfect, and then they've only got to copy it over once instead of copying it over every single damn time, which is slowing down development. And you've got to have a network engineer help them put that across, because it's got to have the things that work with it. And if the network engineer is not doing that, guess what he's doing? He's off working on server meshing. So again, it's not just speeding up Squadron 42, it is actually speeding up server meshing and other things they can be working on. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what do you want to hear in the comments, Paul? Because we're going to get roasted.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, be civil. If you're upset about it, let us know why you're upset.
Yeah.
You know, try to articulate why you're upset about this.
And we're just trying to explain this from both sides. We're middlemen here, right? Yeah. So I understand why people are pissed, right? But I also understand, I think it's a much smaller niche than, what would you say, 20% of people are actually the pissed off percentage?
At most. At most. Probably more like 10.
And I think most of us are level-headed. And I expect there'll be comments below where people are saying, I don't get why people are so pissed off. Like, you know, but there will be people that are pissed off, you know? And I think if we all help them through their anger rather than belittle them or go off at them or make fun of them, because there were definitely people in Spectrum making fun of people that were pissed, is help them understand. And that's what I hope this video does. I hope it helps both sides, because there were both sides that were wrong. You know, and I'm gonna say this as well. There were content creators that made this worse. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there are people who made it worse on both sides of this aisle. Either CIG's propaganda department or the game's going to crash and fail.
Propaganda department.
Yeah,
they have a propaganda department now. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. But what I want to see in your comments, I want to see, what are your thoughts? How can CIG improve their own communication abilities? Do you like these changes? Do you think the idea of these limited release views and more focus on progress tracker is good? What would you like to see in the progress tracker now that they're kind of removing a lot of the support for the release view? What improvements do you see there?
And do you see this
as helpful?
And do you see it as a good thing? Because I think it will speed up development, and the quicker we get that Squadron 42 out the door, the better people are going to feel. They're like, oh, finally, that's done with. We can move on to the PU that I've wanted for X number of years. And I think there are a lot of people that just, like, I know Osiris can't stand how long Squadron 42's taken, right? But he does understand why it has to come first. He does understand that financial thing. And I don't think a lot of people... this is a big complex project, and there are a lot of moving parts, and I think that's why I don't want to say you just don't understand development. That's not it. It's on CIG to explain it,
and they haven't very well,
and they haven't.
Like the fact that we like literally described what agile was, I don't think CIG's ever explained that. Like they've never explained that, like, we don't know what's going on in past the current sprint, because if they said that, then they would admit that they don't know what's going on. So they're afraid of it, you know?
The monthly report alone, when they have the programming segments, tells me alone they don't know what, because they can't explain it. They need to get someone that speaks plain English, not programmer, to do that. There is obviously some programmer guy that's doing that, and someone's just like checking the spelling and posting it. He doesn't even understand it himself. They literally need a producer to translate that back to human English. No offense. But so we understand, but obviously a producer can't. I don't know how long it would take, a couple of hours, but like someone's too busy to do that. But it'd be really good if they could, because like there are times where I, as a Formula developer, don't understand it, but I know I hear it from you and Space Tomato all the time that you guys struggle with that monthly report, right? Because it just is in this lingo it's like you're talking to a mathematical professor and he's talking in numbers and algebra, and it just makes no sense. Yeah. So yeah. All right, I think we'll leave it there. Paul, thanks for joining me. Where can people find you, Paul? Because I know you're doing a lot of videos lately.
Twitch.tv/theastropub, youtube.com/theastropub. I'm there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursday and Friday at 8 p.m. Central. Friday and Saturday at noon Central, where I do things like Captain's Table, office hours, gameplay, and even a tabletop RPG called The Spice Must Roll on Saturdays. So come join us there.
Excellent. And you've been doing all this. Sorry, that was all the funny thumbnails you've been doing lately. Makes me laugh every single time. All right. I've been Execute. He's been Astropub. We'll catch you in the next one.